Welcome to Lesson 132, Comparing and Ordering Integers. Today we're going to talk about how to compare integers and then how to use those comparisons to order integers. Alright, so first we need to talk about our math symbols. Just as a quick review, and just to remind you that each of these symbols does have a specific name, I want you to take your left hand, put it out, and with your index finger and your thumb, make an L. If you tip it slightly towards your right shoulder, you'll notice it looks almost exactly like this symbol right here. So this symbol that looks like a tipped L is our less than symbol. It starts with an L, looks like a tipped L, so that should help us remember that this is the less than symbol. The symbol that goes the opposite direction and does not look like a tipped L is our greater than symbol. So yes, this is greater than and this is less than. They do have different names. And then of course we all know this sign right here as our equal sign. So it tells me whatever is on this side and this side have equal value. Alright, so just as a reminder, integers are the set of all whole numbers, their opposites, and 0. So it's like saying that you're all students and some of you are boys. So the big encompassing factor is students, and then some of you are boys. Well, all of these numbers are integers. Some of them are whole numbers. So if it is a whole number, it's also an integer, no matter what. Right? We just have to remember what makes a whole number and what makes it not a whole number. So if it has a fraction or a decimal, it is not a whole number, and it can also not be an integer. Alright, so when we're comparing integers, sometimes it's easy to start off by just thinking about a number line. So if I'm looking at 10 and comparing it to negative 10, if I take one of my squares, and let's see if we can't make this green instead. That'll work. So if I have negative 10 and I'm comparing it to 10, if I look here, I see that negative 10 is to the left of positive 10. Well, if you think of a number line, when we go up the number line, our numbers get larger. So the further right we go, the bigger the number gets. The further left we go, the smaller the number gets. And that's the same even after 0. I know our numbers go the opposite way and tend to get larger in our minds. However, they're getting further away from 0, which means their value is less and less and less. So I'd rather only owe somebody $1 than owe them $10. Okay, so negative 10 is actually less than negative 1. So the way you want to look at this if you're struggling is if you draw a number line, whichever number is further to the right is the larger value. So because 10 is further to the right than negative 10, 10 is the larger number. Okay, and then we can try this again and move our squares. So I have negative 4 and 1. So 1 is further to the right on the number line, so that tells me that negative 4 is less than 1. I can try again with 0 and negative 3. 0 is further to the right on the number line, so that tells me that 0 is greater than negative 3. Then I have negative 1 and negative 5. Because negative 1 is further to the right, negative 1 is, and this should actually be flipped around, greater than negative 5. We'll fix that. And then we have 2 and negative 9. So I have 2 and negative 9. 2 is further to the right, which tells me that 2 is greater than negative 9. Alright, so what I'd like you to do, these are larger numbers, and you can draw your own little number line. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if it helps you, go ahead and draw it. I want you to pause, and I want you to try to solve these inequalities on your own, and when you come back, we'll go over your answers. Alright, so what you should have found is that negative 12 is less than 12. 1 is greater than negative 14. 0 is greater than negative 25. Negative 100 is less than 50. And 15 is greater than negative 25. So this is almost secondary when it comes to comparing if you have this negative sign. So if you have the negative sign, you really need to focus on, okay, if this is positive and this is negative, no matter what, this has to be the larger number, because this tells me I have $15 in my pocket, whereas this tells me that I owe the bank $25. All right, so now we're going to use comparing integers to help us order integers. So you need to look at these numbers, and we're going to go from least to greatest, so let's always make sure to check the directions. So what we need to do is we need to look and we need to say, okay, I know that my smaller numbers are going to be the negative numbers. So I look and I see that I have negative 21, negative 15, negative 50, and negative 2. So right now I can ignore these three numbers. Remember, the further away from 0 a number is, the smaller it is. So in this case, I have negative 50 and negative 21, negative 15, and negative 2. So I kind of want to go in, because we are in opposite world, I could say, okay, well, just looking at it, this would probably be my largest number if it weren't a negative, but because it is negative, it's actually my smallest number. Okay, and then I know that negative 21 would come next on the number line. Negative 15 would go after that. Negative 2, and then we would actually get ourselves back to 0. And now that we're at 0, we can look and say, okay, well now this makes sense because 4 comes before 10, and then 10. So really what you're doing when you're putting numbers in order from least to greatest or greatest to least is you're looking at the number line and you're saying, okay, if I have my number line and it's the way we typically see it, least to greatest, I'm just making a number line. If I'm going greatest to least, I can make a number line, but then I just have to flip it. So let's check our answer. In this case, we are correct. Negative 50, negative 21, negative 15, negative 2, 0, 4, and 10. All right, so let's take that a step further and take it on to looking at sea level. So here's the mountain and we have sea level. Sea level is always 0. I want you to take a minute and pause and take these elevations and put them in order from least to greatest. When you come back, we'll go over your answers. All right, so you should have found that the highest point would have been 10,000 feet. And the next highest point was 7,500 feet. And then you have 200 feet. And then now, because we're below sea level, we have negative 500 feet and negative 1,375 feet. This does take some practice, but once you get used to it, it's just as simple as when you're ordering and comparing positive numbers. All right, so we will try this one more time. Again, I want you to pause and I want you to put them in order from greatest to least this time. And when you come back, we'll go over your answers. All right, so in this case, 12 was the greatest amount of money that we had. And then 7, 3, negative 7, negative 12, and negative 15. So the person who has $12 has more than the person who owes his buddy $15. All right, so on Edmodo you have your quiz, and this problem is going to be on there along with a few other ones. A ship wrecked off the coast of Myrtle Beach. The divers discovered a treasure chest at 17 feet below the water's surface, a cannonball at 10 feet below the surface, and the ship was found 22 feet below the surface. If I were a diver, in what order would I discover these things? So first you need to know how to write all of these numbers as integers. So think of what you're reading, 17 feet below water surface. And then you need to put them in order of how they would have been found. So would you find the thing deepest in the ocean first, or would you find the thing that was closest to the surface first? As always, if you have any questions, please be sure to post them on Edmodo so we can go over them in class tomorrow.